Hello, today I'm the alter ego, 8mm bank robber man. I have my M16A1, the awesome bowling shirt, and then a Tri-Com chest rig loaded up with mags because, well, Tri-Com chest rigs are based. Oh, and then of course a comically large duffel bag. I'm here for the bank's money, not your money. Your money's insured by the federal government. Now with this video's dose of heat references out of the way, let's get into the topic of today's video, which is I got together with Great Northwest Weaponry, Blind Sniper, and Guns, Gear Guns with Geary Gunderson to talk about our favorite milsurps. I'm looking at their picks in this video right now, and then they're going to look at mine in their video today as well. So that this video is not stupid long, I'm going to try and limit it to about 30 seconds for each choice, making this video less than 15 minutes. A few things I want to talk about before we go in though. One, I was a little bit surprised that we did not see any military surplus shotguns on this list. Although we did specifically specify rifles, I was expecting somebody to break the rules and say a Winchester 1897 or a Remington Model 12. That didn't happen. Second thing, I was the only one who picked a parts kit build, which was a VZ61. Everybody else chose no parts kits. I didn't choose that restriction, and that wasn't one we talked about beforehand. Alright, let's start out with Great Northwest Weaponry. Let me start the timer on my 90s bank robber Casio watch. Try and do 30 seconds for each gun. Favorite rifle he owned, Gewehr 98. I've wanted one of these for a long time, but they are pretty expensive. The closest that I got was a Turkish M38, so I do have one of those. I think they are very cool rifles, and this one would definitely be a favorite on my list if I actually owned one. Favorite he didn't own was a Johnson M1941. The Johnson rifle has a helical magazine and it feeds from stripper clips from the sides. It takes 2 at a time. Very, very unique rifle. It's basically the predecessor to the M1 Garand. They were used for a very limited time, and interestingly, they were specifically used during the Bay of Pigs invasion. They just hold a really interesting part in American history. His favorite practical rifle that he owned was a 1917 American Enfield in .30-06. Those things are so cool. I would love to own one someday. It's basically just a more differenter Mauser made in the US but actually designed by the British. It's basically taking designs from many different countries and putting them together. Super cool. I would love to own one. However, the practical rifle that he did not own that he wanted to get was an SVT-40. Now this is a semi-automatic 7.62x54R Russian rifle that was used during the latter part of World War II. I know it was invented in 1940, but it didn't really start seeing service until the very end. These rifles, also very cool. You'll notice for both of mine that I did not own, I chose semi-automatic rifles. He chose semi-automatic rifles for his as well. Now let's jump into pistols. His favorite that he owned was a Luger P08. Lugers, they're just always going to have a solid place in the hearts of gun owners. They are such cool pistols. We all love them. They're unique, they're strange, they are far from practical, but that was not the purpose of this category. His favorite that he did not own was a Lottie L35. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't know what a Lottie L35 was, but I looked it up. It is basically a Finnish, more differenter Luger. It's a really strange pistol. It doesn't have the weird toggle lock like the Luger does, but other than that, it looks pretty similar grip angle. It was a kind of a strange pistol, and he chose it because he just really likes Finnish weapons, and hey, who am I to judge that? As far as I can remember, he was the only one to have a revolver in his practical gun category. For his practical gun that he owned, he chose a Smith & Wesson M1917. These are baller little revolvers from World War I, and I gotta say, I love me some World War I firearms. It takes 2 half-moon clips he would slide in there, close it up, reloads really quick. You can get those half-moon clips anywhere, which is good because if you want an older handgun, you can get those half-moon clips pretty easily, and for some older handguns, buying magazines is difficult. So you can stock up on half-moon clips a lot easier than you can stock up on magazines. That was one of the things that he said, and 45 is a common round. However, his practical that he did not own, I'll be honest, was something that did not make it on my list, but they are very cool and I have shot one. It is a Browning High Power. Now, he didn't make any specific specifications on his Browning High Power, but he just said he wanted a Browning High Power. These have a pretty high capacity magazine. They're pretty cool. I think he did specify 9mm. 9mm is one of the most common cartridges, if not the most common pistol cartridge in the United States. I think that was a good choice. Next up, Let's talk about the blind sniper. For his favorite that he owned, he said a Mosin Nagant. Now, I was pretty similar. I was more specific and chose my M44. I have 3 Mosin Nagants, an M44, a 9130, and then an old school Remington 1891. Any of those are an excellent choice, but for my favorite, I would choose the M44 because of that side-folding bayonet and the fireball that comes out the end. They are exciting rifles. However, his example was an 1891-30. He didn't necessarily say that that was what he was going for. He just said a Mosin Nagant. 91-30, if I had to take a rifle for practicality's sake, that's the one I would go with of the 3, but if I was going for practicality's sake, I would not choose the old garbage rod. Favorite he did not own, he chose an 1891 Carcano, and he was talking the long boy. Now, I got myself an 1891 Carcano in the safe. This one was manufactured in 1917. Very cool, but it's a short guy. He wanted one of the really long ones because he thinks they are flat shooting. And also because of that long barrel, it's not going to have much recoil, and they're kind of rare. It would be really cool to own one of these. Now, practical he owned, he chose semi-automatic, very good choice. He chose an SKS. Because he was not doing parts kits builds, he couldn't choose any of his AKs or his ARs. The SKS is the next best thing. You can load 10 rounds from a stripper clip pretty easily, and they are semi-automatic, fairly accurate rifles in a good intermediate caliber. Practical, he did not own. He actually made a reference to me, when he was talking about this. He said the Spanish FR8. Now, he called me on it. He knew that my practical rifle I would pick was going to be my Ishapore 2A1. Beautiful rifle. The FR8, though, is a little unique. Let's be real here. The FR8 is a Mauser that was made after the Spanish adopted the Setme. So because it was after the Spanish adopted the Setme, it has many features that the Setme has. It almost looks like it has a gas tube under the barrel, but it's not a gas tube. It is the storage space for the cleaning kit, and it was so that you could mount the standard Setme bayonet on the front of the gun. It also has a Setme rear drum sight. This is a gun that someday I would love to own. They are very, very unique, very, very cool. I will have one someday. Let's dive into Blind Sniper's pistols. First, he said favorite he owned was a P38. This is an obvious choice. If I had a P38, the P38 would have been my favorite pistol that I own. But I don't have a P38. You can see my problem here. The P38 holds, I think, 8 rounds in the magazine, single action, double action, really heavy trigger pull. The trigger kind of sucks from everything I've heard. But they're pretty cool pistols for sure. World War II, they're just slick handguns. It's also a predecessor in some design choices to the Beretta 92, which is pretty cool as well. All right, favorite that he did not own. This one actually appeared twice, and this one was a consideration on my list. The Broom Handle C96 Mauser handgun. They take rounds from the top, from a stripper clip. They have a shoulder stock and combination holster. They are so slick. We all love them. If you were a gunner, you want to own one of these. They're just too expensive, sadly. This was a good choice for his favorite because, let's be real, they are not very practical. Even if you find one in 9mm, you probably don't want to use high-powered defensive loads in that. And let's be real, it's really not that great of a gun. However, great does not matter if you look cool. Okay, practical that he owned, he chose a Star Model BM in 9mm. This choice I was kind of questioning a little bit. You know, they don't have the greatest magazine capacity. The BM is a 9mm 1911. I think they hold 8 rounds in a magazine, but you guys can correct me on that if I am wrong. It looks a lot like a 9mm 1911, but it is a little bit different. This one was kind of confusing to me. I don't know why he would choose this. Maybe he doesn't have other surplus handguns, but, you know, we'll let it slide. He said practical that he did not own. He chose 2 because the first one, let's be real, was kind of a cop-out. He said a Glock police surplus pistol. Now, listen, I know Glocks have been adopted by different police agencies and militaries all around the world. However, I would not count a police surplus pistol. In fact, if I did count a police surplus pistol, I might have considered using my Bull Armory Cherokee in this competition. It was made in Israel, and it was a security pistol. If we count police pistols, we gotta count security pistols. I didn't put this one on this list for this reason. So yes, it was a cop-out, but he gave us a backup. His high power. Now the Browning high power, we've already talked about this. Slick, very cool handgun. If I was looking for a cool handgun, a Browning high power would be at least in the top 5. They are so cool. Okay, now let's move on to Guns, Gear, Guns with Geary Gunderson. Geary chose his favorite rifle that he owned as the SVT-40. We have already talked about how beautiful the SVT-40 is. If you're a gun owner, you want to own one of these. Favorite rifle that he did not own. This one is edging the line between still being a rifle, but we will count it. He said, PPSH 41. These things are wildly expensive, even to find one in semi-automatic. But if you could find one in semi-automatic, it would be very cool to own. You would have like 50 rounds in a drum. I think it's actually something more like 70 rounds in a drum. Stick magazines too, because the drums are hard to find. These are so cool. And that was a good choice, Geary, as long as we let it slide. Practical rifle that he owns, he chose the M1 Garand, the classic, the greatest battle implement ever devised. The M1 Garand was a great choice. You can hunt with it, you could defend yourself with it, and if you put one of those adjustable gas blocks, you can use more commercial ammo. This is a good choice. All right, practical rifle that he did not own, he went real expensive on this one. He chose an STG-44. Ammo for these is expensive. The gun is wildly expensive, but they are so cool. The STG-44 was one of the first assault rifles ever made. It is kind of tied with the M1 carbine, depending on how you'd find the word assault rifle, or sorry, the M2 carbine. And the STG-44 is just very, very neat. I have slain many a zombies on Doris with the STG-44. Super cool rifle. Favorite pistol that he does own, he chose, we've already talked about it, the Browning high power. Browning high power is top 5, at least, in the greatest surplus pistols available on the market. Favorite pistol that he did not own, you know it, I know it, we all know it. Our favorite, the C96 broom handle Mauser. Absolute piece of beauty, elegance. I mean, come on, who does not want a shoulder-stocked pistol? They are so cool. But again, not very practical. That doesn't really matter in this circumstance. His practical pistol that he owns, he said again, the Browning high power. Now you might be saying, but John, he just had 2 Browning high powers on his list. Yes, he did. But here's the difference. The first one, Browning high power, made in Belgium during the Nazi occupation. It was used for probably some very evil things and used by some very evil people. However, the other pistol was won by a group diametrically opposed. The pistol that he owns, that he chose as his practical pistol, is an Israeli surplus Browning high power. Both came from the same lineage, both by 2 groups that were diametrically opposed to each other, and that is fascinating. Favorite pistol that he did not own, he chose a CZ85, which is a lot like this. I would have a CZ85 if I wasn't one of those, what do you call it? Oh yeah, poor people. So this is a Israeli-made CZ75 clone. This one is polymer instead of steel. But if I could have a steel CZ75, I would love to own one someday. I just don't have one yet. I want to hear what you guys think. Did you absolutely hate 90s bank robber Mauser Man? Or did you think he was a pretty cool dude? Anyway, go check out these guys' videos. They're going to tell me what they thought of my choices. Well, I tell them what I thought of their choices. You should watch all of our videos today and tell us what you think. Alright, I will see you guys in my next video. I would never ever hurt anybody, and this aesthetic is 100% a joke. But I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John.
Named John.